This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China confirms probe landing on Mars with the Zhurong rover to begin exploration. At least 10 Palestinians killed in violent clashes on Friday. And UN chief calls for withdrawal of foreign fighters from Libya. Hello and welcome to Africa Live here on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up, in business, IMF set to complete its final review of Egypt's $5.2 billion standby loan program. And in sports, holders Al Ahly host South African giants Mamelodi Sundowns in the first leg of their CAF Champions League quarter-final. Welcome to Africa Live. Now, after around 3 months of orbiting Mars, China's Tianwen-1 probe has successfully touched down on the red planet. It landed safely on Saturday morning, marking another milestone in China's space program. CGTN's Wu Lei has more from the Beijing Aerospace Control Center.
Tianwen-1's probe lander and rover first separated from the orbiter on their way to the surface of the red planet. Chinese scientists say the entry, descent and landing only took about 9 minutes, but they said it was the most challenging part of the mission.
It takes about 17 to 18 minutes for the signal to get from Earth to Mars, so engineers on the ground couldn't intervene during this process. The lander-rover combination had to rely on the preset systems.
After descending, the lander-rover combination finally touched down in the designated landing area, the southern part of Utopia Planitia, a large plain on Mars.
This is the first time that China has actually ventured out of the Earth-Moon system and reached extraterrestrial planetary space, and we achieved the goal of orbiting and landing just with one single mission. Later, the rover will conduct scientific expeditions.
China's mission to Mars was officially set up in 2016. During the whole operation, the China National Space Administration has worked closely with the European Space Agency and other organizations from countries like Argentina, France, and Austria. Chinese engineers and scientists are taking photos to remember this historical moment. Their years of effort have finally paid off. They say the experience gained this time round will pave the way for the country's future missions into space.
We're planning the Mars sample return mission in around 2030 because we have other missions, asteroid exploration and Jupiter exploration, and we're going to conduct those missions in an orderly manner.
The lander is expected to deploy in a wrap for the rover Zhurong before rolling out onto Mars and exploring. Zhurong is designed to walk there for at least 90 Martian days. Wu Lei, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a congratulatory message for Tianwen-1's successful landing on Mars. He says the landing marks an important step in China's space exploration. He says it's a leap of the country's space program from the Earth-Moon system to the interplanetary system. The mission makes China one of the world's advanced countries in the field of planetary exploration. Xi's message was read by Vice Premier Liu He. Vice Premier Han Zheng watched the landing at the Beijing Spaceflight Control Center. Well, the landing on Mars marks a huge and historic achievement for China. Let's take a look back at how the country got there.
中国的东西能去，能飞得更远，中国人在宇宙当中的脚步能迈得越远越好。
China's most powerful heavy lift carrier rocket, the Long March 5, carrying China's Mars probe and now being rolled on a mobile platform to the launch pad.
这是我国第一次行星探测任务，即将开启中国的行星探测时代。
加油！
准备打开医疗会诊门诊。5、4、3、2。 1，点火。
器件分离。
这是个中国火箭飞得最快的一次，而且是中国火箭要飞得最远的一次。
在举国欢度国庆中秋之际，天问1号探测器发回了升空自拍，图上的5星红旗呈现出了鲜艳的中国红，以此向祖国报告平安，送上生日祝福。
天问1号火星探测器升空机动控制正常结束。
火星迎来了第一个中国的卫星，这是一个很大的步伐。这是我们国家有了第一个行星际的探测器绕着火星转了。
Moving on, the death toll continues to rise as violence between Israelis and Palestinians enters its 6th day. Israel renewed airstrikes on Gaza early Saturday. Hamas responded by firing rockets into Israel. Palestinian officials say at least 10 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces during violent clashes along the West Bank. At least 132 people have also been killed in Gaza, including 32 children and 21 women. Hundreds have been wounded. 8 Israelis have died in rocket attacks fired from Gaza. May the 15th marks the anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel, but for Palestinians, that's the day when they were forcefully evicted from their homes. Earlier, we talked with Noor Harazin in Gaza and Yael Lavi in Israel for the latest from both sides.
We can hear the Israeli strikes every now and then. We can also witness rockets being fired from Gaza towards Israel. Yesterday during the night, the Israeli warplanes raided a home in a Shati refugee camp, and this refugee camp is a very densely populated area. There is no streets there. There is only alleys between the homes. 7 people were killed, including 5 children aged between 13 and 5 years old. The only survivor from this attack, from this airstrike, Israeli airstrike, is a few months old baby. This brings up the number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip on the past 6 days up to 125 Palestinians, and more than 37 of them are children. Right now we can hear the sounds of new explosions in the Gaza Strip, so apparently this escalation is still going on.
While the United Nations has expressed concern over the conflict between Israel and Palestine and has called for an immediate ceasefire in the region, a UN spokesperson addressed the issue in a press conference.
The Secretary General appeals to all parties to immediately cease the fighting in Gaza and Israel. The ongoing military escalation has caused great suffering and destruction. It has claimed scores of civilian lives, including, tragically, many children. The fighting has the potential to unleash an uncontainable security and humanitarian crisis and to further foster extremism, not only in the occupied Palestinian territory in Israel, but in the region as a whole. The parties must allow for mediation efforts to intensify with a view to ending the fighting immediately.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says there are still foreign fighters and mercenaries in Libya. This is despite a ceasefire agreement signed in October which called for their withdrawal. In December, the UN estimated there were at least 20,000 foreign fighters in Libya. Guterres made the statement in a report to the UN Security Council. This comes as the country's interim government prepares for the December 24th election. Guterres urged stakeholders to continue making progress in order to ensure the polls take place. Well, for more on this, we're now joined by David Otto Endley, Director on Security for Horn of Africa Institute for Peace and Security. David, do you think the SG's latest appeal will be heeded?
Thank you, Mahia. When it comes especially to the decade-long crisis in Libya, very deeply divided, which has been there since 2012, the United Nations is not seen as a neutral party. Of course, that is because it backs the Tripoli government of national accord. And, again, that, calls into question its own neutrality against the Libya National Army, which, of course, is run by veteran Khalifa Haftar. So I think it will be very difficult. Again, this call was made, as you rightly said, in October 2020. They were given 90 days to withdraw various militias and various mercenaries. At the time, the UN did estimate that there were about 20,000, but some other figures put mercenaries in Libya to close to 40 to 50,000. Now, the issue is that, because both sides, and when I say both sides, I mean the Government of National Accord and the Libyan National Army, do not trust each other. It's a matter of security before disarmament for this side. So I think, it's going to be a very difficult scenario, taking into consideration that even the Government of National Accord has militias, mercenaries, and foreign fighters from different governments. We've seen the role that the Turkey plays in supporting the Government of National Accord. We've seen Egypt, United Arab Emirates, France, and some say Russia is supporting the Libya National Army. So I think without a proper trust in each other, this call is not going to be heeded.
And David, why do you think there's still persistent presence of foreign fighters and mercenaries still in Libya?
I think the simple answer is that both sides do not trust each other to disarm or let go of the support that they get from these militias. Now, the UN, of course, has talked about the formation of the Government of National Unity, the GNU. But this is not the first time that elections in Libya have been planned. So it is a matter of trust. And because the UN, doesn't have the good faith that all parties, should expect it to have. Again, alluded to the fact that it supports the Government of National Accord. It's very difficult for the Libyan National Army and indeed other militias to heed to this. Now, again, there is oil, which is at stake. The country has been split into these oil fields which are being run. So there is a huge interest for both sides to continue to maintain control of these minerals. So it's going to be very challenging unless Libyans themselves, stand up, genuinely and exclude the interference of foreign fighters and, foreign states into Libya. Without that, all these calls, could just be noises which will have no impact.
And finally, David, looking ahead, what will be the implications of the departure of foreign fighters on Libya, Sahel, and the wider Middle East region?
Of course, if you don't have foreign fighters, interfering, in support of one side to another, then you've got the capacity for local, resolution of conflict. So, in the case of Libya, for example, you would have the Libyans taking the initiative, to come to some kind of a sustainable solution since Gaddafi was overthrown in 2012. Now, the impact has been that the chaos that is being caused in Libya, is being experienced everywhere in the Sahel. You've got all these terrorists and their weapons flowing into Chad, Sudan, and all the rest of North Africa. And that is also trickling down towards the Sahel. The issue is that now that you have someone like Idris Deby, who used to be a great ally to block the penetration and the infiltration of rebels from Libya, now he's dead. And there is no certainty in the political stability of Chad. That also poses a huge crisis within that region. So whatever it takes to limit and to stop the flow of foreign mercenaries into Libya will be welcome. But where do they go? Because it will be a balloon effect. That is where most African countries really have to wake up and think about the fact that if foreign mercenaries leave Libya, they have to go somewhere. And this is where the UN really has to think about these kind of measures that they take, as they're doing in the case of Libya.
All right, David, thank you very much for that. Director of Security with the Horn of Africa Institute for Peace and Security, David Otto Endley, joining us live there. Now turning to the latest from the global coronavirus pandemic, the World Health Organization is asking rich countries to reconsider plans to vaccinate children. It is instead urging them to donate the doses to the poorer countries. France and Sweden have already started donating doses to the COVAX initiative after vaccinating their priority populations. The US and Canada, however, have begun vaccinating adolescents. This comes as countries like India are facing a devastating second wave of COVID-19 infections and a vaccine shortage.
India remains hugely concerning, with several states continuing to see a worrying number of cases, hospitalizations and deaths. WHO is responding and has shipped thousands of oxygen concentrators, tents for mobile field hospitals, masks, and other medical supplies. COVID-19 has already cost more than 3.3 million lives, and we're on track for the second year of this pandemic to be far more deadly than the first.
Madagascar has rolled out its vaccination campaign. The inoculations will prioritize health workers, senior citizens, security personnel, and social workers. The jabs are being administered at one hospital in the capital, Antananarivo, and at several other communal facilities. President Andry Rajoelina has said that getting the AstraZeneca jabs is voluntary. He says the country would soon introduce other vaccines. The Indian Ocean island nation had previously encouraged the use of herbal remedies to cure COVID-19, something which the World Health Organization cautioned against. The country has so far reported about 40,000 infections and close to 800 deaths.
Okay, the goal we are targeting is about 70 people per center because there are 10 vaccination centers. So we think one vaccination center will reach 70 people per day.
Meanwhile, India's COVID-19 tally has passed the 24 million mark with over 326,000 new cases registered. The country has reported nearly 3,900 new deaths. The capital, Delhi, will remain under lockdown until Monday as it begins its second round of immunizations. Abdullah Hashmi reports.
Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal says the Indian capital plans to vaccinate its entire population of 30 million against COVID-19 free of charge at more than 380 centers in the next 3 months. But this comes as the country's two largest vaccine manufacturers, Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute of India, struggle to meet the growing demands, with many providers running out of stock.
There is no such center in my area from where I can get vaccinated. People are so much off to it that they want to get vaccinated, but slots are not available.
Besides the issue of booking vaccination slots, many people also have to bear the weight of soaring vaccine prices. The cost of Serum Institute's Covishield has more than tripled since January, from 250 rupees per dose, a little over $3 to up to 900 rupees or around $12 per dose.
The charges for one dose, which is 900 rupees, that seems to be on a higher side, because just few days back, I think maybe in the month of April, same BL Kapoor hospital was charging 250 rupees, right, for one dose. So it doesn't look justified. How come that 250 rupees for same Covishield one dose has been increased to 900 rupees per dose? That is, of course, not at all justified.
Despite the price hikes, health workers and officials are still urging members of the public to get vaccinated as soon as they can.
If people will get vaccinated as much as possible in a single day, it will be helpful for each of us, for frontline workers, for people and general population of India. Okay. So I urge people that get vaccinated as soon as possible. There are so many myths regarding vaccination. Don't trust them, don't listen to anyone. As your doctor advise you, just follow them, go and take the vaccine. It will be helpful for you only.
The Delhi government has asked for a boost in supply of vaccines from the local manufacturers, and it's saying they're doing everything which they can to procure the vaccines. Meanwhile, they've also approached Reddy Labs to procure the Russian vaccine Sputnik V jab. Despite shortage of vaccines, vaccinations in Delhi continue for 18 and above. Abdullah Hashmi, CGTN, Delhi.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. It's time for us to take a short break. Here's what's coming up. Unknown attackers kill 4 soldiers in Juba. And China's president says traditional medicine has an important role in building a healthy China.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. On to South Sudan now. 4 soldiers belonging to a protection unit of a Central Equatoria local government minister have been killed. Sudanese authorities have said the attack seemed well coordinated and was targeting government officials. The unknown attackers sprayed Moro Isaac Genesio's car with bullets along Yei Road in the capital, Juba. The minister was not in his car at the time of the incident. This is one of many recent road ambushes by bandits. In the last 2 months, 12 people, including Ugandan truck drivers, were killed on the same road. Another Ugandan female aid worker was killed in Budi County on Wednesday. Well, let's get more on that story now. CGTN's Patrick Oyet joins us live from Juba with the latest. Patrick, what more can you tell us about this story at this time?
Yes. In this particular incident, what happened actually is that the governor of Central Equatoria State had traveled to Yei. Yei is 100 kilometers away from Juba, is located southwest of Juba, and it is at the border between Uganda and DRC. So it's very, very strategic town for South Sudan. So the governor had traveled to Yei by air. He had gone there with some of his bodyguards, of course, to make sure that they promote peace. They were to disseminate the current peace deal. And some of his bodyguards now are moving on road to go and help in his protection, and they were attacked on the way, and 4 of them unfortunately lost their lives. Now, this particular incident is also not isolated, because the whole of this week actually there have been intensified attacks on convoys, on vehicles that are moving along Juba-Yei Road. On Monday, there were 2 people who were killed, including a local chief, and that, according to the state government, was done by cattle herders. And then the governor formed a committee to go and try to find out what exactly happened and initiate a dialogue. That committee also on their way, they were ambushed. Fortunately, nobody died. Then on Tuesday, there were people who were returning from the market. About 5 of them were killed, 4 others were injured. So if you see, there have been really some form of intensified attacks in the past week. And the issue now, the governor is saying that advising people actually not to first use that road for now as they look for solution to find out what exactly they need to do about it.
Obviously a worrying development, Patrick, but how is the government now reacting to this?
Yeah, you know, this is something that the government is saying is very difficult now to identify, first of all, who are the people causing this kind of problem, who are the people ambushing officials along the roads, and even civilians who are, some of them are carrying out their trade. Because one, there are so many issues here. One, you have armed group that is opposed to the current peace deal, which is led by a former deputy army chief, Thomas Cirillo. They are active in this area between Yei and Juba, so they are suspect number one. Then you also have the cattle herders who are armed. They also occasionally attack people along the roads, so they are also another suspect. And then you have also the people, you know, criminals who are armed, because guns in South Sudan is in the hands of so many people. So you have all this complexity. So the governor now is saying that what they want is to ascertain what exactly is going on, who are the people behind this. And of course, this is something that is difficult for the state government to handle, because in as much as South Sudan is practicing a kind of a decentralized system, the security is still centralized. So Central Equatoria alone will not be able to handle this kind of insecurity. So they need to appeal to the national government to come up with some armed forces, for example, start patrolling along the road to ensure that this is brought to an end. That's why they are calling for some time. They're asking for some time to be given to find out what exactly they need to do, and advising people to avoid using the Yei-Juba road.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for that. CGTN's Patrick Oyet in Juba, South Sudan. Moving on, British troops have recovered items belonging to Islamic State terror group in a Malian village neighboring Niger. The items include rifles, rounds of ammunition, camouflage, mobile phones, and hundreds of liters of petrol. Malian authorities have said that villagers had been threatened by the terrorists, causing panic among them. The insurgents are said to have fled by swimming across River Niger. The UK troops are among soldiers deployed in December last year to conduct reconnaissance patrols, amidst growing extremism in the West African country. The UN mission in Mali is made up of more than 14,000 peacekeepers from 56 different countries. So far, about 250 UN soldiers have been killed there, making it the most dangerous peacekeeping mission in the world. That's according to the United Nations. Well, let's get more information on that. We are now joined by Olalekan Oshunkoya, who is a policy analyst and researcher, joining us from Abuja. Now, the UK troops seized IS weapons in the Mali region. What are your thoughts in the Mali operation, rather? What are your thoughts on the operation?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the operation is just a confirmation of what we already know, or what has already been in the general knowledge before now, that the high seas is increasing, is stepping up the operation in northern Mali and of course the entire Sahel as well. It just says that more than ever before, the level of threat has been heightened, and I think one of the reasons for this is because of the political situation in Mali. And I think it's just also a reinforcement of the need to actually begin to increase the level of response as well from the international community, from the UN and from every other stakeholders in this process, to make sure that the situation is kept on the wrap, because it's escalating. It's showing that this, you can imagine if this amount of ammunition and can be seen in a small village in northern Mali, and that's just very close to Niger, and it means that there's a whole lot happening in the region. There's transportation of weapons. There's also recruitment of new terrorists, and there's a whole lot of bigger threats to that. So it means that you can imagine what's happening in other villages, and how many of these small cells can be found in these areas and in these regions, and the effect of that in the entire security of the entire Sahel region. So it just a proof, in my opinion, is that to confirm that there is an increase in threat. It's not just an idea that we are hoping, or where all the indicators are saying that. Now we know that Islamic State has increased their support they have increased their operation as well, and this is happening in local villages, and then the threat is becoming higher more than it's ever been.
And so what would you say is the situation on the ground, and would you say then that the UN strategy is working?
I mean, the fact that you've been able to see these issues, it's just that it's a good thing. It means that at least you're getting some harm out of the or potential militants that might be destabilizing the region. And it's also, it means that the strategy of increasing, first and foremost, the number of troops, peacekeepers on the ground, it's a good one. Because if you think about it, being able to have more support, because this political system in Mali for so long, because of this protracted crisis, has already been weakened by a lot of different reasons. We all know that. But then being able to have this external support in terms of this expertise and technicalities, and also harmonizations and all of that to support the government and the local people who are trying to deal with the consequences of this crisis, it means that it's very useful for us. And I think the United Nations understands this, and that's why they've increased the number of troops on the ground. And this is, I do believe, is working, and it just means that that will also be very strategic as well. As much as the boots on the ground is going to help reduce the tensions or get more weapons out of the way or get more reduce the increase of the threat, or also to kind of like help us lower the level of this crisis. But then, more importantly, is that we also have to be reminded of the key important reasons why we are here in the first place. What are the reasons? What are the other connected problems that is making this crisis protracted? Which then you have to talk about the economic situation of it. Because again, if you think about it on the ground, if you are living in a village where there's almost zero government presence, and then the IC supported troops, supported terrorists come into your village, not only are they threatening you, but they are giving you some sort of a livelihood as a young people, as a young child, as a young person, or even as a traditional ruler, or some sort of person that wills some local power, you are more likely to be inclined to give them some harbor. And the biggest problem in this is that ISIS is the crisis. Is one of the biggest concerns is that we don't want the whole Sahel region to become another safe haven for the Al Qaedas and the ISIS, because if there is so increased instability, and then there's a lot more free hand for them to work to expand, and then to bring in the weapons, and then to terrorize the people and the villages, and also the government across this region, countries in this region. It means that we are given. It's just bigger. It's a big problem. So the most important thing is that the increasing number of troops is very good. And then I would say at this point, my take will be the UN strategy is working, but it's also has to be. It's not just about the military boots on the ground. It's also what about the economic policies, the initiative that actually increase the economic circumstances of the people in the region, that is actually making recruitment easier, for local people.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insights there, policy analyst and researcher Olalekan Osunkoya, joining us live from Abuja, Nigeria. Moving further afield now, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Nanyang City in China's Henan province on Wednesday and Thursday. Nanyang is famous for its traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. She stressed the importance of promoting and encouraging further innovation in TCM. Xia Ruishu has more now from Nanyang.
The city of Nanyang in central China's Henan province was once the birthplace of Zhang Zhongjing, a very famous Chinese pharmacologist and a physician that lived 2,000 years ago. On the very first day of President Xi Jinping's visit to Nanyang, he visited a memorial facility that's dedicated to the medical sage. Here, he learned about Zhang's life and his contribution to the development of traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. Nanyang has long been famed for its TCM culture. It is rich with natural herbal medicines. Over 2,000 varieties of herbal plants have been discovered in the city. Relying on these advantages, Nanyang has stepped up efforts to promote education, tourism, and products. TCM is a medical science that was formed and developed in the daily life of Chinese people, and in the process of their fight against diseases over thousands of years. It has made great contribution to the nation's procreation and the country's prosperity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, experts say that the TCM treatment has proven effective and played an important role in helping control the symptoms of the patients, lowering the proportions of patients whose condition turned from mild to severe, increasing the cure rate of the severe cases and lowering the mortality rate. President Xi has called TCM the treasure of Chinese civilization, saying it embodies the wisdom of the nation and its people. In the past few years, he urged the greater efforts to explore the essence of TCM, calling for better collaboration between enterprises, universities, research institutes to advance its globalization and modernization. Here in Nanyang, he underlined the TCM's important role in building a healthy China again, saying that the country should carry on finding elements of TCM and innovate them. 夏瑞雪 CGTN 南洋河南 Province.
Well, it's just about time for all the latest in business. Here's what's coming up. The IMF set to complete its final review of Egypt's $5.2 billion standby loan program. And South African property market remains robust despite COVID-19 dampening the economy.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours, the rain.
Welcome back. Let's kick off the business in Egypt, where the IMF is set to complete the country's second and final review of its year-long $5.2 billion loan program at the end of June. A positive review will unlock the final tranche of the facility worth $1.6 billion. Egypt received an initial disbursement of $2 billion last June and an additional $1.6 billion late last year. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has the details from Cairo.
The $5.2 billion loan is meant to fund the government's emergency financial packages and counter the prolonging effects of the coronavirus pandemic.
Like any economy worldwide, Egypt's been affected by the fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. The hardest hit sectors were tourism and aviation. The Suez Canal succeeded in maintaining the pre-COVID profit margins, but tourism is the major source of hard currency for the state. The halt in flights and tourist inflows strongly reduced the state's revenue. This loan helps cover the deficit and ensures funding continues for important social welfare programs, healthcare sector and development projects.
In its previous review, end of 2020, the IMF had raised its expectations of Egypt's economic growth from 2% to 2.8%. It has also praised the economy as flexible and able to resist external shocks. The current review is underway till June.
The World Bank doesn't provide any loans unless there's a study of the economic situation. Credit history shows Egypt has succeeded in repaying its loans and interests on time in spite of the coronavirus crisis. There are also positive outlooks from international ratings agencies towards the economy. Egypt's achieved its lowest inflation rates in 20 years, a drop in interest rates, and a drop in unemployment rates and a rise in growth rates in spite of the coronavirus. These numbers show the economy is strong enough to fulfill its debt payments.
Egypt has been one of a handful of countries that avoided economic contraction amid the pandemic year 2020. And experts say a positive IMF report would support the economy going forward. The release of the final tranche of the IMF loan is not just about receiving money, but it's a sign of approval for foreign investments to return to the North African country. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, growth in South Africa's real estate market remains robust despite the damage inflicted on household earnings and employment by the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been plenty of activity in the lower and middle income segments, with sales in high end now also gaining momentum. A CGTN's Julie Shire reports record low interest rates and falling property prices are among the biggest drivers of this renewed activity.
Matt Brink was considering upgrading from an apartment to a home for a while. When South Africa's economy slowed during the hard lockdown a year ago, property prices dipped and the decision became simpler for Brink.
I've always wanted a house, so the house was always going to be the plan. COVID just made it that much easier on my wallet and my life. It just brought me to my goal a lot sooner. As for having a house to live in, I certainly enjoy living in an actual house with a garden, a lot more space to enjoy if I'm going to be locked down in my place, if I can't go anywhere.
Brink had to compromise, however, on selling his old property.
It was a bit of a mixed bag because as much as I saw this great opportunity to buy something now that was not affordable and now is affordable, the place that I was selling wasn't exactly making a huge amount of profit that you would have expected. I still made a bit of profit. It just felt like I'd even out, I'd made even on it, and I could move all that bond economy of our family into a house instead of a smaller space.
South Africa's house prices have dropped by around 15% over the last year. Historically low interest rates have also made the cost of debt more affordable for low and middle income earners like Brink.
So it's more a case of sellers becoming more realistic, and suddenly there is a flood of buyers that are looking to buy value purchases. So whereas we had very few buyers before, we're now sitting in a situation where there are lots of buyers, but they're still searching for good value.
A third wave and the upcoming winter months may dent momentum, but the short-term outlook still remains favorable for buyers.
We've got a couple of months, I think, still on the downside in terms of actual prices, but I think that going into the new year, I'm quite positive that people will start buying more property. Of course, the third wave is the biggest factor that we are potentially faced with.
With no end in sight yet to South Africa's lockdown, real estate agents expect activity to be sustained over the next 12 months. There's also been a pickup in the high-end market, but that's only really likely to take off when most South Africans are vaccinated and the economy can fully be reopened. Julie Shire, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
The World Bank has agreed to lend $500 million to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The proceeds of the loan will be used to improve roads, prevent erosion and reduce flood risks in the capital, Kinshasa, a city that is home to 17 million people. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has the details.
Under the project, public spaces will be developed and key roads rehabilitated across the DRC capital, Kinshasa. Neighborhoods without access to electricity and water will also benefit from the project. The funding includes a credit and grant of $250 million each. The DRC government will only have to repay the credit of $250 million. The grant is free under the World Bank's International Development Association. It's extended to the world's poorest countries to help them develop. The population in Kinshasa has grown rapidly over the past decade, but the development of its infrastructure has been slow. According to government statistics, more than 70% of the roads on the city outskirts are in need of repair. The poor state of roads has led traders transporting foodstuff from neighboring provinces to increase the cost of their products to recover the high transport charges they incur. The World Bank believes the project, dubbed Kin Elenda, will improve the lives of millions of Kinshasa residents who've been struggling to get by. Political instability and corruption have undermined the DRC government's ability to maintain its infrastructure over the past 2 decades. But the current DRC president, Felix Tshisekedi, has vowed to end insecurity and crack down on corruption. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Now, businesses in Nigeria say the cost of construction has soared due to rising cement prices. Lawmakers have criticized the dominance of 3 large firms in the country's cement industry, saying their price increases are further delaying construction. that is critical to economic recovery.
Nigerian lawmakers said the dominance of 3 large farms was keeping prices high and impeding construction needed to aid the recovery of the economy. Dangote Cement, founded by Africa's richest man Aliko Dangote, has 60.6% market share. Lafarge Africa accounts for 21.8%, while Boa Cement has 17.6%. Their dominance stems from a cement import ban that has been in place for most of the last 20 years to develop self-sufficiency in cement production. However, the policy presented challenges over the years. Cement farms raised prices during Nigeria's 2016 recession to counter low sales volumes, and prices have continued to rise.
It has a large effect in what the price of building development will be right now in Nigeria, and it's a lot of problem because already prices are really skyrocketing, but this is due to, there's nothing the developers can do actually, but this is due to the raw materials of the likes of cement and then some other things.
And the direct impact is recorded in reduction in construction by stakeholders.
Because most people that are used to buy, like, let's say 100 bags, when they come, they will look at it and see that their money will not reach up to that 100. They will buy like 40 or 30 bags, you know. And the way market used to move before, because of the price, market don't used to move it now.
Nigeria's high prices are part of a continent-wide trend, and in some cases, sector collaborators have seen cement costs double in price in recent years.
There should be a price control, because from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, the price is just skyrocketing without no price control, and nobody can tell the manufacturer that this price is beyond the avoidable reach of a common citizen.
The fast way will be to allow import of cement into the country. The slow way will be to invite other cement players, the bigger cement players, who are more efficient with regard to how they run their plants and so on, and who can over time bring prices down.
This is a hard-set equation of market dominance influencing prices, resulting in partially constructed apartments and buildings.
Monopoly or not, I feel that the government, they are still a very big player in regulating some of these things, and they have to come to the table and then make sure that they do what is fair by everybody, and then so that we can have a system that is balanced.
A 2016 World Bank report revealed the final cement prices in Africa are 183% higher on average than world cement prices. A great margin that could hamper Africa's agenda of self-sufficiency and competitive sector growth projections. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, it's time for another short break. Don't go anywhere. Here's what's coming up in the sport. Holders Al Ahly host South African giants Mamelodi Sundowns in the first leg of their CAF Champions League quarter-final.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be